Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And if you are a avid listener of all of our Certain POV media podcasts, you'll know that today we're continuing our conversation about MagFest 2019.
And we have a room full of guests. Well, a room that belongs to one of our guests, actually. We have Case Aiken, Ben Milton, and Addy Thomas joining us from Another Pass and CPoV.
Woo! Yeah.
And Scruffy Nerfherders as well.
Yes, collectively Scruffy Nerfherders.
We have all of the we have all of our shows represented here, if not every participant in those shows.
Hi, MJ.
That's just mean.
Well, no, I was also thinking, I was thinking of J Mike.
Okay.
Somebody should think of J Mike.
Right. We know Ben and Addy don't think of J Mike.
As little as possible.
And so, yeah, we wanted to chat more in depth in this conversation about all of the beautiful, beautiful gaming that was at MagFest 2019. The first thing I want to talk about more in depth, because our most recent episode, if you're an avid listener of Fun and Games, was about arcade games. And oh my God, do they have arcade games at this festival?
Oh, yeah.
This was every arcade memory all at once.
I want to challenge the people in this room. Can you think of an arcade game that you loved from your youth that wasn't there? Because I struggle to. Like, they had Silent Scope. They had Gauntlet. They had the original Punch-Out! And Donkey Kong.
They had a lot of versions of Dance Dance Revolution, so I was pretty happy.
That's true.
I didn't find Bubble Bobble, but I wasn't actively looking for it.
There wasn't Virtua Fighter 2.
Okay. Was there Virtua Fighter 1?
No, I didn't see any Virtua Fighter.
Okay.
Games.
All right. So
I didn't see Pac-Man.
I saw Pac-Man.
Yeah.
There was
Okay.
Pac-Man, there was
Yeah,
Galaga.
There were some that were hard to get to. There were like
Yeah,
a
there
bunch
was
that were
that
behind
too.
like a tournament area, which I realized later was actually ones that you could play. It had nothing to do with like the tournament that was going on. The way they had positioned it made it look like that was what they were going to be doing at some point in the event, and that you couldn't go there. So like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, for example, the only cabinet I saw
and
for that.
you'd think that was like, that's tournament only.
Right, yeah, because there was a tournament only pinball section also. Like,
yes, there was.
So that there were a few that I saw were there, but I didn't feel like I could play, especially because everyone else felt the same way, so there was no one actually at those cabinets.
It's the social contract.
Yeah, like I realized that it wasn't actually the case, but it looked like it was, and so it's the same way if you start a line, like people just join without actually asking. If you don't have any lines, people will be like, I guess there's no line, we're not supposed to go there.
Not supposed to. No, we gotta better stay away from that.
I will say what I really loved also is that there was quite a few 4-player cabinets, which growing up, like Simpsons, Turtles 2 the arcade game, X-Men,
Gauntlet.
Yeah,
Gauntlet.
and the 6-player X-Men cabinet.
They had a
too.
6-player and a 4-player.
Yeah.
Did anyone play as Dazzler?
I didn't actually get a chance to play, but
Because I think anytime I looked, no one was playing as Dazzler.
Dazzler.
No one plays as Dazzler.
I usually play as Wolverine. If Wolverine's taken, I'll play anybody else except Dazzler.
Nightcrawler, always Nightcrawler.
Always Nightcrawler.
Dazzler has such cool powers.
No, Dazzler really does. Like, okay, no, as an adult, thinking about it, Dazzler has really cool powers.
Yeah, I mean, they sort of did the Sue Storm kind of move and like gave her like a lot of extra powers. Like they gave her the ability to make solid holograms. So basically, Green Lantern.
Well, like,
as
if you
long
can
as
turn
music
sound
is
into,
going.
if you're already a like mutant
Oh my God,
transducer, why the
Dazzler's
hell
gonna
not?
get a good movie before we get a good Green Lantern.
I want to,
because the weird marketing tie-in that created Dazzler, there was supposed to be a damn movie.
That's
there was.
right.
There absolutely
Was
was.
that with Taylor Swift as Dazzler?
So-
Yeah,
Yeah.
like way back when.
Yeah.
When
like
Dazzler was
the
first
80s, or-
created.
yeah,
with,
like-
you're talking about that
original
OG Dazzler,
It was
Disco
supposed-
Queen.
It was supposed to be a tie-in movie and comic book character.
Right.
This was like the craziest. Like,
Wasn't it supposed to be Olivia Newton-John?
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think at one point.
Now I
Yeah.
want to see Taylor Swift
This-
as Dazzler.
Now I want to see Taylor
I mean,
Swift
it
as
was
I just
Dazzler.
watched.
amazing.
I just watched her concert on Netflix last night.
Yeah.
She would be amazing.
Yeah, it was,
Sure.
very,
So
it was this
good.
very weird augmented reality kind of thing, like presenting
Yeah.
as if
Like
Dazzler was a well, yes, but like presenting as if Dazzler was a real star in our world,
Yeah.
and that the comic book was in fact the same world, and that you sort of felt like the character kind of like was this meta entity that you could really potentially meet all these superheroes.
Yeah, and we didn't really get this till Pauly Shore existed.
Just a reminder for our listeners, this is a podcast about video games.
Right?
And we're just talking about how cool Dazzler is.
And Pauly Shore.
Yeah.
I also just really like saying the word Dazzler. It's one of those like just inherently funny words.
It is. But so back to the X-Men cabinet though, like
She throws explosions.
She does throw explosions.
Like it's an area of effect. It's better than Cyclops.
No.
Wait,
better than
Dazzler throws
Jubilee.
Explosions?
yeah.
Well, in the arcade.
In the
cabinet.
arcade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super
No,
They
what-
made-
she has just laser powers.
So
that
she's
can
just
create,
a shinier Jubilee then.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Actually, someone made a comment at one of the panels today that was the superpower that would be best for the world, and someone argued that like Jubilees would be actually the best because you could just be the pyrotechnics display for any nation for any sort of like coming together point. So you could be both saving nations millions of dollars and at the same time like promoting unity amongst the people. And it's like that's really compelling, but you should just be Dazzler in that scenario because Dazzler is that but more.
Yeah.
I said that out loud in the panel.
Yeah, I know you did.
Of course you did.
Of course you did.
And that's why we love you.
I'm so proud of you, Case.
Of
Never
course.
stop being you. Never stop.
It was so deep cut. I don't know how we can go. This is the best convention.
Yeah, it was. It was.
We love this convention.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like the reason I brought up X-Men, though, other than I love that arcade cabinet, is because there is a running gag, if you know, of MagFest that I got the history of recently. But so, if you make in the X-Men arcade, Colossus, they made up a power for a super move that he can't actually do, which is he screams and makes a giant spark around him, and he does a scream that Geoff can do for us. That if you do it at the convention, it echoes through the halls.
And I found out why. A number of years back, because MagFest started.
This is
back,
a flashback inside a flashback. By the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
It's like 16 walls.
You finish yours, and then you finish yours.
Right.
MagFest started in 2002, so they've been doing this for a while. A couple of years ago, they had that cabinet, and the volume, I guess they cranked it up and ripped the knob off.
Yeah, like
so
the volume was busted.
Anytime somebody hit the button for Colossus' mutant power,
Just echoed out.
you would just hear it everywhere. So people just started screaming along with it.
And it just became the call of MagFest. To the point that when they put the signs up to like let you know that you're heading to a more quiet area where the rooms are, it's literally a picture of Colossus from the game making the spark with like a big do not do symbol.
It just please don't.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to be honest. You're now saying it's like, oh yeah, it would be that is just to keep it down for the guests sign. But in my head, I thought it was just super literal. Just don't do the Colossus noise.
Just stop doing this
And
damn.
there were certain times where you'd be walking the halls and you'd just hear one person do it. And have
Like the wave.
Have
Yeah.
any of you ever been near a field full of turkeys?
Yes.
I'm
I'm not embarrassed to say so, but yes.
Because the thing is, if you go up
Well,
to
you
the,
were at the beginning of time.
if you go up there and you do
I
the
named them
dumb
turkeys.
thing that all of us would want to do, you walk up to them and go, they will all start doing it.
Yeah.
And then you've got another 30 seconds of these turkeys just doing it back at you.
Yeah.
And that is a very apt comparison to what goes on. One person does it
and a bunch of turkeys to respond.
Listen, gobble gobble, mother. I'm one of those turkeys.
Yeah, that's
and
Almost every
and you would
time.
hear it like permeate around, and it's not even that it's echoing; it's that like it's the wave.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
their version of the wave.
It's their version of the wave,
But,
it's
like-
our version.
Going back to the first layer.
But what I really love about this con and that arcade room is that wasn't the only gaming. Like, it was a portion of the gaming. And then there was an entire room that was just indie game developers hawking their wares, trying to get you to play their games. And then there was another room with every console known to man set up with a rental space where you could play just about any game on any console.
Right.
It's the most gaming I've seen in one space.
Not exactly rental though. It like
It's
a
like a
library
library
system.
checkout.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there was
you-
no fee. Like everything was free to play. Like there was no restriction on any of that. Like which is even more impressive that they felt like comfortable just having those carts out. Like the one room over was the vendor area where people are selling like all these rare games, but people could also just check out from like on an honor system. This thing.
And it was nice that they divided it up. Yeah, because from like left to right, as I'm looking at it, there was the console room, there was the indie game showcase, there was the vendors, and then there was the arcade.
Yeah.
And it was, and I really enjoyed it that they divided it up like that because going to other conventions where it's all together, yeah, it's cool and you'll see all sorts of new things. It's difficult to change gears, and it also just feels like way too much. Like you enjoy it more. Like I'm gonna go play some arcade games. Let me see what pinball is open. I'm gonna see what the new games are, and you know where to go, and you're gonna see them all. And you also get to see a lot of really interesting, like artistic ideas, like the Death by Audio people and all of the arcade cabinets that they had built.
Yeah, and also like even on the vendor floor, there was a ton of really interesting gaming related things. Like I think my highlight, and I'm curious what if you guys had any highlights from like the vendor floor. There was a guy who's taking Nintendo amiibos and turning them into zombies. They were called Zombiebos or something like that.
Yeah, and they still worked as amiibos because
The
it didn't
base were
change the
intact. But like they put blood on their face. Like there was one of
Yoshi's Woolly World. It was the Woolly Yoshi, and his guts were hanging out, and they were also yarned.
yeah. It was
How the hell did I miss this?
That's so awesome.
It was so cool. There was one where I think it's Bowser with Isabelle attached to his head, like eating
yeah,
his brain.
I did see that. Yeah,
It was crazy, and like,
It was one little booth amongst all these amazing places.
but it was something that caught my eye because it had a crowd around it, and also it's just ridiculous. Like, who
Yeah,
thinks of
that's
that?
so
Yeah.
far out there.
It's so great, and
I
like,
want what he's on.
Right?
there was also no shortage of like people just selling games. Getting to walk around with Geoff and Sarah throughout the con was really nice because I'm not a collector anymore. I sold off all my old stuff, but Geoff is, and they're both really passionate about getting some of that exclusive or old stuff that like every booth we passed that had old games, they stopped and like digging through stuff and looking through stuff. And there were some really ridiculously rare stuff that were being sold for fairly reasonable price too.
There was some good stuff here and there. It wasn't like a video game con where most of the tables you were going to find were resellers, retailers, or
Right.
folks moving collections, but there was just enough that were there that, yeah, it was really a lot of fun to get to dig through that. It meant that because unfortunately, the downside of really pouring over all these things is it takes up a lot of time. So given that there's only like 5, 6, I would say,
Yeah.
booths that were there that were
Helps,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
That's one thing that I liked about this con is like the size of it, like was manageable.
Mhm.
Like when you start getting into like the bigger cons where like, the floor in and of itself, like you can just spend an entire day on the floor looking at everything.
Mhm.
That's great, but then you end up like having to choose like, okay, am I going to go to this panel or am I going to stay here on the floor or am I going to go get an autograph or whatever? Whereas this, like, you could really do it all. It was really super manageable.
Yeah, I didn't
which
feel
really
pressured.
liked. Yeah.
And even in the indie game showcase, where, I mean, they want more people to play the games and everybody wants to try out all the new stuff, I never felt rushed. I never felt pressured. There was a game that's called Just Shapes and Beats.
Yep, that was one of my favorites.
Yeah,
That
we
was-
played that together, several of us.
Yeah. Matt, Addy, Sarah, and I played Just Shapes and Beats together. And it's one of these where your little thing moving around like a little, like a Geometry Wars or a twin stick shooter of whatever. And you're not shooting. You're just trying to avoid any pink stuff that happens. And they would all show up and move with the beat of whatever the music was. And it was a great deal of fun. It was like a bullet hell game with a little bit of a rhythm game in there. And we stood behind a group that like was playing through it. We were very excited to play, but we weren't going to pressure them.
Right.
We got on there. We were not very good at the game.
No, definitely not.
But we made it fairly far.
We
though.
made it fairly
Yeah.
far. The
That's some
demo
good teamwork.
The demo was 3 levels with like a little secret level at the end. We made it to the 3rd level.
And then we died a lot.
And we died a lot, and there were people behind us that were watching that also clearly did want to play the game. But even after we died and restarted the level like 4 or 5 times, there was never like are you done? Can we have this now? It was like we finally decided, okay, we'll give this one more shot. Cool. Have fun, guys.
Yeah.
Good work done. Yeah.
And off we went.
Yeah.
And
There were a lot of really great games to play too, and some have teams of 5 people, some have teams of 1 people, but they were all really eager to talk about it. I have a soundbite that we're gonna play probably towards the end of the show. We'll put it in that I got to chat with the creators of Sneaky Ninja, among many other games. We'll have a few different interviews featured at the end, but I want to speak about Sneaky Ninja specifically because it's one guy who he essentially said, hey, what if Mario was a ninja? And made this side-scrolling platformer where, the graphics are fairly simple, the design is fairly simplistic, but you play as this little ninja and you can wall jump and hide in bushes and hide from guards.
It's like blobby ninja. Like it's not even like a.
And
It's
Yeah.
really aesthetically really cool.
Yeah.
And but the really cool thing about it, so the designer's name is Mike, is that he started with a simple design because it would be easier to program, but then he ended up really liking it. But what's really cool is that, you know, he told me and you'll hear more of this in the interview, he would go to shop it around at cons, and people would try and do stuff in the game that they just couldn't but seemed natural. It's like, oh, I thought I could do this thing. And he went, oh, well, I guess you should be able to. And then designed it into the game. And that's what this space allows a lot of. Why I wanted to bring up Sneaky Ninja specifically is because, you know, there's a lot of one-on-one with the developers or the creators that you can say, hey, I like this, but... And they might actually be able to take that feedback and
make a better game.
Yeah, utilize it, which is really neat.
Yeah, they're not here to just get their ego stroked.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Also, the amount of indie games they had there, and like me and Case played a game today that I'm not going to mention by name that we didn't like. That was fairly not poorly made, but definitely like there were design flaws. You know. And that's fine too. Like that's
both in like how it was controlled and like very conceptual parts of it.
Yeah.
Like the very nature of like, oh, this idea for this type of game is going to include elements that were just like, oh, this is antithetical to an enjoyable experience. Why did you think that would be a pivotal component?
But that said, like you can choose to talk to the developer about it if you think it's a change they can make, or if it seems fairly integral. These things you don't like are integral to the game. You can kind of just walk away and move on. And there was tons of stuff to play, and there was stuff that I thought really was cool aesthetically, but I had no desire to play. But was still interested to watch because it looked really cool.
There was a game that Sarah and I tried called 127 BPM that I don't know what this was for. I don't know who made it or anything because there was just one person sitting at the table. When we were done, it's like, did you have fun? Yeah, great, thank you. Enjoy the convention. I don't know if it was just meant as an art installation. But what it was it was two dance pads, but like the Xbox ones. So it's like up, down, left, right, but it's also got the X, Y, A, B buttons on the corners. And so you were just a New Yorker running to the subway. And you would do the top row of buttons to move along the upper path and the bottom row of buttons to run along the bottom path. And you're just you're racing the other commuter and like getting past all these people to get to the train. And at the end, it tells you what your BPM was of how fast you ran. And the average New York walker is 127 BPM. It was very Maniac Mansion looking graphics and in a very Crash and the Boys kind of side scrolling. The whole experience was maybe 2 minutes. And, you know, you're just, like, going as fast as you can on this dance pad, and Sarah and I raced each other, and it's like, cool. And there was no cards or anything. And I'm not going back to the convention tomorrow, but I want to figure out what the hell they were doing. It was, you know what? Because if they're selling something, they've got me just with this weird viral marketing.
Like, no, we're not selling you anything.
We're not selling you
I gotta have it.
Shut up and take my money.
Because you know you're not going to look it up, and it's going to work, because, like, they got you to think about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
And
well, and there were also tons of people willing to talk about this stuff too, whether they were people actually who worked on the games or friends of, or just other players. And also, like Geoff said, like, you know, no one was impatient when waiting to play a game, either in the arcade or in the indie showcase.
Right.
Like, people were just patiently taking in the things around them. And there were a ton of, like I said before, there were a ton of games that I had no desire to play, but I was happy to watch others play. Like, let's talk about the most major version of that feeling, which was the Mega Manathon, to take it back. So there was a hallway, not even a room, just a hallway in the hotel where they had a giant stage set up and people were playing every single Mega Man game, not in order, just all of them, to raise money for Child's Play.
Like all of them. Like we came in for Game Gear, and then like also DOS was going on at one point.
Yeah,
like,
and they were also doing like weird fun versions. Somebody played through the original Mega Man on the NES while there was an accordionist sitting next to them playing all of the music while they played.
Yeah, they found a way to edit that version of the game so there were sound effects but no music. And I don't recall if in the options you can just turn off the music, but like that was really fun to mod the game for just that purpose, to do that kind of a stunt. And I mean, they raised quite a bit of money. I don't remember what the final number was when I was last there, but it's still going on.
Yeah.
And then eventually, when they ran out of Mega Man games to play, they were just going to play other indie titles.
Yeah, and they had a small concert going on last night.
Yeah.
Like they just kept that stage going 24/7 because MagFest is 24 hours a day for every day it's running.
But it was really interesting to kind of and fairly cathartic and fun to turn up and just watch someone struggle or succeed at playing a Mega Man game while commenting. Like,
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
wasn't pointless. It was kind of engaging and fun.
Yeah, the way I called it was high level casual,
Yeah.
where I know the word casual can be very loaded for gaming, but the fact that these were people as of this recording tomorrow, Awesome Games Done Quick 2019 will begin. When this episode drops, we'll be in the throes of it in the final few days. And Awesome Games Done Quick is a charity stream that we've spoken of in the past, that the people who do speed runs for that game, for those games, for that festival, are top tier, high level S+++ Delta whatever versions. Like, these people are, fighting 3 other people for world record by tenths of a second. The folks playing the Mega Man games, they knew the games, they could beat them, but they die. They would mess up. And it was kind of fun to be on that journey with them.
Well, yeah, because the crowd would react like they would, he'd die and everyone would go, "Oh," like, like,
and then get past that easy jump and we'd all applaud.
Right, like, and it was very communal, like a lot of the con, and there's a lot of watching games culture now between Twitch and other things, and I think it's really, while a lot of people are like, "Oh, why do you watch people play video games?" Well, it's for a sense of camaraderie, I think. Like, especially if it's games that we're familiar with. Yeah. If we're not playing them, but someone else is, you want to root for them. Like, the Game Gear Mega Man game is an awful mess of a game, but if someone's playing it and you're watching, you want to root for them to get through that terrible game.
and it's kind of fun to have those, like, nostalgic feelings. Even walking around the arcade, if you saw games that you remembered, even if you didn't play them, there was a certain just like, this is...
Yeah, that happened to me. I saw Dragon's Lair. And I was like, "Oh,
that's a game that I am no good at."
No, I was horrible at that game too. I was dreadful at that game.
I feel like Dragon's Lair,
loved it.
Oh yeah,
loved watching people play, and I loved watching people play.
That's a game to watch.
That's the thing. Like the Twitch thing isn't new. It's just that it's the first time where it could be sort of randomized. So it's not just based on proximity. Because, like, when we were kids, if you were at an arcade, you were watching people play arcade games, even if you weren't actually playing. And generally, because arcades, like, when you're a kid, you don't have that much money. Like, you can't always be playing, so you kind of want to save it up. Like, there's only so many machines, so you're watching there. If you have friends who have different video games than you, how often did you go over to someone's house and, like, play through a video game and just watch them beat it? Just, like, or maybe help a little bit or take turns. Like, that's just video games. Like, it is always a spectator sport in addition to, like, the actual, like, here's the Twitch, like, my Twitch reflexes are maxed out in these ways. Like, but it is that community. And, like, the fact that we are getting public events that we can go to for free for this one. Like, you didn't need the badge to go into this one.
That's right.
And, like, just all enjoy it and together, and it's a thing, is so cool.
Yeah,
I agree.
And, like, I also really like having that communal experience because it makes you feel like you're part of that adventure, whatever it is.
Right.
I mean, I remember one of my close friends when Resident Evil 2 first came out. I am a coward. I can't watch scary things or play scary things by myself. But if I'm with at least one other person, I'm a little braver because they're as scared as I am. And I remember we would play we would play Resident Evil 2. And by I just sat with him while he played the game. And we got the bejesus scared out of us constantly. And, like, but nothing's more satisfying than jumping with somebody and, like, experiencing that moment of fear together. It's why the Five Nights at Freddy's games are popular at all amongst YouTubers, is because when they get scared ballsless, you are scared with them in those jump scare moments. And it's on the other side of it. If someone's playing a really hard game and they succeed at a thing that you don't think they'd ever succeed at, you're rooting for them. You really want them to succeed because you want to see that next thing.
Absolutely.
Which I think is really cool. I think as far as video game related things at a con or festival that I've ever seen, this was the most well put together and best experience. Like, there was never a moment where I was in any of the rooms that had stuff, even if I wasn't playing, that I felt bored.
Right.
Like there was just enough to see, do, experience that I never had a moment of boredom at that convention at all.
Well, I heard mention that, like, we've seen plenty of the arcade cabinets. Did any of you guys get to play on any of the cabinets, pinball machines?
No,
I did not.
I didn't do pinball. I did both the console area. I did the indie stuff, and I did the arcade.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
And then I watched friends do the bridge simulators upstairs, like the big, like
Oh yeah.
like 6 to 10 people all acting like on the bridge of a starship simulators. So you're
Oh,
like, oh,
yeah.
I'm just doing like communications, or I'm just doing shields, like
Yeah.
or
that's
sensors, like
dope.
They're so
as if
cool.
you were a starship. It was really cool to watch.
I would be terrified to do that. Like,
it's a
just-
LARP.
Like
Yeah.
they even had a captain, like each like
Oh,
who wasn't
really?
on a screen, just like being like navigation. What are we seeing over here? Like shields. What's up? Like it. Crazy.
That's so cool.
That-
Like the
pretty
graphics aren't
neat.
that intense. It's because it's mostly just it's like the displays of being like, here's my stats on all this
Yeah.
stuff.
LCD kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Did anybody get into the? They had like the was it Mech Warrior game? The
Oh, those
VR?
pods, the
Yeah.
battle
Yeah.
pods.
Did
Yeah.
anybody get into
Did
any of
not.
those?
Yeah, there's
No,
always
I
a
didn't.
wait.
I've wanted to go into one of those things so badly.
I did too.
I was
did too.
hesitant.
Yeah,
but I
that-
the
that's a
line
goal.
was the issue
That's a
for
go-
me
yeah.
every time.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe next time I'm in a room with one of those, it's like, all right,
Because those look
Right.
today's the day.
Yeah, if there are only 3 people in line, you're fine.
Yeah.
If I have to wait 24 minutes to finally achieve my dream of getting in one of those weird sweaty eggs.
You know what? One of us is taking you back to MagFest tonight.
Maybe you can make it into one of those.
God.
That's true.
Before you go back to your apartment.
Back to the hotel, yeah. Oof.
We can do it. We're doing this. This is a plan already.
were
like
those
I'm already
things-
thinking about
I'm gonna
this.
wake up Sarah at 3 in the morning. You'll never guess what I did.
It's the new reality, guys.
Milton talked me into it.
Were those things just the chamber and as like good a simulation as possible, or was there any like feedback or like hydraulics kind of thing going on with those?
I don't know.
It didn't look like hydraulics.
Yeah,
but,
I think they were
but
fairly
it did look like
stationary.
feedback.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's
yeah.
there's a little movement of something. Yeah.
That's the one thing I would say that I had no interest in on the indie floor or even in any of the game rooms is VR is a thing that I'm not really into. And there were some VR games that look cool, but I don't know. It still feels gimmicky to me.
I would feel weird at one of these things because like no matter how much they clean it, those masks.
Yeah,
That's one of the reasons Sarah
Right.
never does them.
Yeah.
There was in the indie showcase room, it had a very nice flowery name, and it wasn't necessarily any indie game in development, but it was like they had a Coleman dome tent in the middle of the floor, and you'd go in there, and there's like a little like air mattress thing with a nice soft cover on it, and a VR headset, and all you are is you're on this like moonlit night on a balcony, and you could do the click move yourself around. You can see like the roses and the petals and stuff float, and it's just like here's a little relaxing room,
Huh.
and you can and I mean the indie showcase room wasn't like the overhead lights weren't on anyway, but there's still like noise and lights and everything going on. Just go into
It's
the
a little
tent.
oasis.
Little
Yeah.
oasis. Just put the VR headset
That's
on.
brilliant.
And yeah, it was kind of nice.
Yeah.
Oh, there's something I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up because I saw video evidence of it. The 501st were there, as they always are.
Yeah.
And while you waited to shoot a stormtrooper, if you wanted to, they also had Super Return of the Jedi set up, which I saw you guys playing a little
Oh, you were
bit
so
of.
bad at it. Oh.
Did your skills not hold up from your childhood?
Nope.
I've never known a human being to be good at that game.
That game is rough.
Yeah, I don't.
Way harder than I remembered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we kept on getting carried back by freaking Minox.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
like whatever that
no.
fucking sequence was.
That Minox owned
It was
us
like
so
almost
bad.
a farce how bad you guys were.
It really was bad.
It
Except
was
for-
like I'm going to progress in this thing, and it's like no, you're not. You're just going to go back a little ways, like
Yeah.
with no death or harm. Just it was just like,
like,
Although we got lucky once, a
Yeah.
Minox was headed in the right direction at one point and picked us up and
and then
took us
dropped us down a hole.
to our death.
it was like Hass Eagle for you guys.
Yes.
It was so bad. It was, and we kept like we switched up. We tried Chewie first, and we were like, "Oh well, maybe Leo." Being nope. All right, Luke. Luke
got the
definitely-
lightsaber. We
Luke
got
will de-
this.
Luke was cool.
Luke
Luke
had some
was
good
actually
stuff going
pretty
for him.
amazing.
Except, like, you decided that instead of swinging your lightsaber at all the things that were trying to melee with you, you were like, I'm going to do the lightsaber
Force
toss.
and I never called it back.
It so just floated like as the Blade of Doom far away from all the threats.
Meanwhile, this thing's just kicking the hell out of me.
Well done.
And you can't just be like, Shh, excuse me, I'm trying to use the Force here.
Can you wait a second?
Could you not? I am one with the Force.
It was awful.
Even after we
Yeah.
established, like, oh no, you like with Luke, you can just jump and you'll flip and spin with your lightsaber.
I still don't know.
That's all. You just play it like Sonic the Hedgehog, dude.
But yeah, actually, that's it. Speaking to that and lack of skills at games, there were some games I played in the arcade room where I was like, I'm so good at this game. I remember being amazing at this game. Nope, I suck at this game.
Yeah.
Like some of those skills I don't think translate from when we were younger playing these arcade games.
And a lot of those, like my skills with like actual arcade games is really low now. Like the actual like joystick is just not natural to me anymore. Like,
right.
Yeah.
like thumbstick, like a D-pad, and like using my thumbs. Like I was playing one fighting game which I was doing pretty well, but my hand was starting to clench up because I wasn't used to using my fingers. I was used to using my thumb to like press buttons in these games.
Well, and also like the joystick in an arcade cabinet and an analog stick are not 1-to-1 because as we learned in the arcade cabinet building panel we went to is that it's just 4 buttons. Each direction is a button. Whereas on an analog stick, it's all, the rotation.
Right. The joystick is equivalent to a D-pad, not to an analog joystick.
Right. And we've been using analog sticks for so long now in most modern gaming where, it's just not, the translation isn't 1-to-1 anymore.
Yeah. Even modern games that have like purely side scrollers, typically you still are using the joystick for the actual motion, and then the D-pad's like some other set of menus. Like it's even the games that are exactly like the old school, you would have used a D-pad on the Super Nintendo kind of situation. Still is just like, no, obviously we're not going to do that. We're going to
I think the only modern consoles that still use the D-pad as a D-pad is the Switch. For the retro games, like you can play Super Mario Brothers and stuff like that, you can use the D-pad below the analog stick to still move back and forth.
And I kind of like that because despite how long the analog stick has been ubiquitous, I feel like I'm still being dragged kicking and screaming into that era.
Certain kind of games. I mean, like other ones like... I mean, like a first-person shooter, it doesn't...
The first-person shooter, you've
that's
got to do
just like, okay, this makes way more sense.
No, yeah, you're right. There are times where I'm, of course, using the analog stick. But most side scrollers, I'm going, why do I need the stick?
Yeah.
These direction
But I'm with you. Like when Mario 64 first came out, and I found out that you were supposed to use the analog stick to control Mario and not the camera.
Yeah.
I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Like obviously, it'd be like Mario RPG. You just like use the D-pad.
Yeah.
Use the D-pad. I was like getting anxiety.
They put the D-pad on this prong all the way on the left side.
Yeah.
Do we ever even hold the left side?
What do you mean it does nothing? What? No, it must.
No, you just hold the middle and the right side. Why?
That's how it's designed.
Just cuz.
I will say I liked the design of the N64 controller if the left side didn't exist. Like if it was just the center
have
and the
that
right.
actually. I have like an N64 like PlayStation style controller where it's just that like the leftmost and the center one are fused into one. It's a very comfortable N64 experience.
Because that's how that controller should have been designed.
Did anyone ever do all the way left and then center? Was there ever a
I
game that did that?
Actually. I would do that in Smash Brothers.
Oh, there was a control scheme for that?
Smash Brothers was pretty simple though.
No,
like
but I mean,
original Smash.
No, like just using not
the
using
D-pad and the analog stick.
Yeah, as it like for like a first-person shooter or something like that would have double sticked it. I think all of those still use the C buttons.
Yeah, the C buttons were the camera.
Well, we were talking about this like dinner tonight. Like the N64 era of games, much like PS1 and Saturn, that was just a whole generation that has not aged well.
No, it's the ColecoVision of 3D.
Yeah.
I mean, well, yeah, I got into a minor fight with Case arguing how Shadows of the Empire is not a good game on N64. We thought it was at the time.
Right. My point was that it was
time.
My point was that it was at the time because it was competing with like Doom and like Turok.
Yeah.
Like GoldenEye didn't come out for like another 6 months. Like
I'm just enjoying starting this argument again.
Here we go. Settle in, boys. It's going to be a while.
It was just a debate on like games.
No, yeah.
Retrospective games versus like judging a game by the standards of when it came out. And some of those are going to be like it was cool that we had a flying or like a 3-dimensional Star Wars game like that.
Sure. Well, and also that
cool.
game,
and that's blasé at this point.
Speaking of Dazzler, Shadows of the Empire was a whole Star Wars project where they were like, no, we're gonna.
That's true, actually. Yeah, that's a nice tie-in.
We're printing a book. We're making a game, and Kenner is producing a whole toy line off of this interquel of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Buy it, kids. There's a not sex scene in there that's kind of weird.
And also, we've named the main character Dash Rendar. Doesn't that sound cool, kids?
Kinda.
That is enter your name into a get your smuggler name generator.
It really is.
But I mean, we were excited about it at the time, and there were a lot of things in it that we hadn't really seen represented in a video game on a console.
Well, and also, a game like that is better in your memory than it'll ever be when you play it again.
Well, just like any graphics on the N64.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the point, which is the N64 especially. I mean, I was looking at a thing on Crash Team Racing recently, and I was like, oh yeah, this actually looks a lot better than, in my opinion, like Mario Kart. In retrospect,
Mario Kart
it
60
holds up a little better.
Nintendo 64 did not do well on the textures
but
front.
all of those 3D games just. It was just an art style that they hadn't learned how to like make look like the thing they wanted, and so they were just doing their best approximations.
Yeah.
And it was really disappointing. And then when you get to the next gen with like Xbox and PS2 and all that, like you get games where even if they're terrible games, like that Batman the Animated Series game with
The Rise of Sun Tzu.
Yeah, something like that. Like it looked great. It looked like a 3D version of the cartoon, like it perfectly. Like. If you were doing a stylized thing, you could make it look exactly like you wanted and it have hold up from PS2 onward. But PS1, Saturn, 64, nope.
It's kind of why I love the original PlayStation so much. There was just, they didn't know what would stick, so it's amazing what went gold.
Yeah, the games that we got in that generation, especially for properties too, like think about Superman 64, which is notoriously one of the worst games ever made ever.
It's barely a game.
It's barely a game.
One of the actual worst games ever made.
Yeah, but like even old Star Wars games, like they were kind of trying anything at that time. Pod Racer, which some people swear by the N64 Pod Racer.
It is amazing.
I treasure my copy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always a PC gamer first, like at the end of the day, but so I'm never going back to that experience. Like I don't feel that passionate about it. But yeah, N64 Pod Racer was amazing.
And it's just interesting, like, I don't think you could make a Pod Racer game now. Like, who would buy that? But at the time, because that's what the movie was coming out.
Yeah, I mean, it was tied into the movie that came out that same summer.
So back to the Dazzler example, they made this whole movie that most of us want to admit doesn't exist. They actually made the movie this time.
Right, yeah. The game was the plan the whole time. They just made this movie.
They spent a lot of money for that pod racing game.
Yeah, sure. Although I will say, like, the arcade version of the pod racing game was
a lot of fun. Yeah,
and it was a really cool design because it's based on the sitting in a seat arcade game, but it's pod racing. Yeah. And you got like your two things next to you, whatever those things were called. Were they just engines?
Yeah.
And like, I always thought that stuff was really cool. And like talking earlier, Addy mentioned either on the last show or this one because they're all blending together. The Star Wars Trilogy arcade game, which I was never any good at, but I loved playing.
But you got to do the mini game where you were defending against Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Who beat that? Did anybody ever beat that?
I eventually mastered this entire game.
Oh, really?
I spent so much money on the Trilogy arcade game because I would walk. It was all through high school because I would walk through Wheaton Plaza on my way home. And there was the arcade there that was like the leftover of a theater that had just closed down, and so you're literally just like in the lobby, and it's just the arcade games. Like it's the only open part of this whole thing now. And the Trilogy, they had some pool tables there, and a bunch of arcade games.
Arcades had pool tables.
Yeah.
Remember? Oh my gosh.
God,
I remember that.
Yep.
And But yeah, I spent all the money I had on this game because I would play it like every day coming, on the way home from school, and I eventually got to the point where I feel like I've gotten like almost into the perfect section area, but like I dominated the high score board for this one. So.
Nice.
Well, the last time I played, I said when we talked about it on a certain POV, I played it at Disney Quest. That like Disney arcade where you paid money at the doors, like $30, and it was free play on all the machines.
Nice.
So I did beat all of that stuff of Star Wars Trilogy arcade. I cannot tell you how many credits it took, but I did it.
Well, that's something about arcades also, like me and Geoff talked about in our last episode also a little bit, that was fun to re-experience at MagFest is arcade games seem to have taken forever when you were putting quarters in the machine. Like I've always felt like I was playing the Simpsons game for hours, but like playing it on the Xbox Live Arcade when it came out, and then now playing it in their arcades at MagFest, like it takes maybe 30 minutes to beat that game, maybe 40 minutes. But like the experience always seems so much longer when you.
It seems epic.
Yeah.
Because every time you die, you've got to put that quarter back in and hit it in time, and you don't. Yeah, no, there's a great level of excitement that comes from it.
Yeah.
And we didn't mention it before. Something I really enjoyed at MagFest was, did any of you go to the computer museum?
Oh yes,
I didn't this year. And we might be able to do it tomorrow, but like I have been at the times when I've been there before.
Yeah, I don't know how much has changed this year and previous years, but it was really fantastic going in there. They had a lot of like weird vector monitor stuff, some really early things as far as just PCs and computers in general and the games that formed from it. There was a little alcove that was pretty much BattleNet. Like
yeah, they
like
had
Warcraft 2 era BattleNet.
Yeah, so everything preloaded, so you could play StarCraft or Warcraft 2.
I think the original Diablo might have been on there.
Yeah,
there was a lot of like random things. The part on our on Fun and Games Instagram, there's a picture of me on a candy apple red iMac playing a game called Power Pete. Now, this was probably my biggest nostalgia feel of the entire weekend. I am a Mac gamer by necessity because those were the computers that were in my house. Our first computer that was the family computer was a Macintosh, back when a CD drive was the selling point. And one of the games that it came preloaded with was this game that was a top-down shooter set in a toy store where you were like the top-tier action figure Power Pete, and you needed to save bunnies
for some reason.
And there was like
of course you did.
Minor little like voice acted lines that had like speech bubbles that went up there, and like, it's all very big epic, come here you rodent, take that you fiend, eat my dust kind of thing. And I sat down and I was just like, oh my god, like I had forgotten this game existed. I heard a little bit of it and it was just like, Power Pete. That's Power Pete. Where Power Pete?
Must get Power Pete.
No, it was a weird moment.
Literally, awesome. Me and Sarah watched them play this game that I'd never seen before. But it was really fun to experience games I've never seen before. They also had like these boxy CRT. I know that's kind of redundant. Monitors,
but like extra boxy,
stacked on top of each other, and then one had a PSP hooked up to it, and the other one had a Nintendo DS hooked up to it. And the DS had Mario Kart playing, and the guy was playing it on the DS, which has the two screens, but then the CRTs were showing what the two screens
There was
had.
one on top of the other.
It was really neat.
Yeah.
And, like, I never even thought you could use that kind of technology. And, like, I'm sure there are easy ways to do it, but it was like, it looked like a hardwired kind of home job to do it, and it was really neat. Yeah, the whole museum had a ton of really old computers. They also had like the Panasonic 3DO was there.
Yeah, they had a couple of more like CD drive early tech kind of things.
Do they have any like the old like Commodore 64s or Trash 80s?
No, they had a Nuon.
Oh wow.
Yeah. For those who are not familiar, Nuon was I believe it was a chip that was put into a couple of DVD players. It was meant to like be installable in any DVD player that would allow you to play DVD games.
Yep.
So you would buy your DVD player, and so you can watch your DVD movies. And for the kids, there are now DVD games you can play with Tempest 4000 or Tempest 3000. And I don't know any of the other games because that's the only one I can think of. And it bombed so
bad.
hard.
So bad.
And really the PS2 was what did it. Like, it's the kind of thing you look back on and you go, this should have been a bigger deal.
Right.
Yeah.
The PS2 becoming like the dominant DVD player still to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some parts of the world.
I mean, yeah, the thing I have that plays DVDs is my PS2.
Yeah, our Xbox 360 just died, and I'm like, well, I guess we're done with DVDs, kids.
Papa's getting a Switch.
Yeah, exactly. So, and walking around there, they had a couple of new ones, and I had to laugh.
Yeah, it was really cool to see the old tech, stuff that I had heard tale of that maybe never saw, and then other stuff that I was familiar with but never had. Like, my first computer was a compact Presario because that's what was popular at the time.
And you know what I'm thinking about? They did have a Tandy.
They had a Tandy.
They had a Tandy. And they absolutely had a Commodore 64. It took me a minute.
I want to that like when you were talking about the game, the nostalgic game. There was a game that like one of the very first computer games I ever played was on a TSR 80. It was called Hunt the Wampus.
Hunt the Wampus.
I don't know that
It was
one.
such a great game. It was so dumb. It was basically just like a maze game. You had to find your way through the maze, but there was this creature like hunting you.
Called the
Basically,
Wampus.
yeah, basically like a minotaur kind of feel. And and as it would get close to you, or as you're making your way through the maze, it was like, I smell a wampus. And that game has always stuck with me as like one of the greatest games ever made.
That's like nostalgia in the vein of arcade games. I was telling Geoff this, and I don't think I found one. This is a game I don't think I found in the arcade, was Sinistar. I don't know if anyone remembers Sinistar.
I remember the name, but I don't remember what
so
it was.
it was this weird space shooter that eventually, after you killed enough bad guys, this giant metal like disc would come flying onto the screen and go, I am Sinistar.
Beware, I live.
And like just chase you around and attack you and scream. And it was like the weirdest space shooter game, but I used to play it all the time. And like every time I'm in an arcade, I hear that in my head, that line, I live.
And it's a very digitized, like, it was the 80s.
Right. Everything.
It was a selling point. The game talks?
Yeah.
What?
Right? There are voices in the game.
Inside the game.
But it was really cool also to experience a lot of this gaming with you guys, especially since it's our first time meeting a lot of you guys in the flesh. It was really neat to kind of go through that all together and experience some of this stuff. Did you have a favorite gaming-related moment at the con? Anybody?
Playing Gauntlet with Addy was great.
Yeah, that was crazy because I remember him always like telling me about like his the particular version of Gauntlet you started with, like classic Gauntlet.
Yeah, not Gauntlet 2. We played the 2-player version.
Oh, nice!
Wow, it was just Wizard and Barbarian, and that's it.
Yeah.
I was about to ask, did you have a preferred class that you liked to play?
Well, for Gauntlet 4, yeah, I like playing Valkyrie.
All right.
Well, because Elf isn't a class. Elf is a race.
Not in first edition.
That's fair. That's true.
Or in the Capcom fighting game.
Exactly.
I remember playing Gauntlet, and I was old enough playing Gauntlet on Nintendo and going, Elf. Fuck is Elf? It should be Archer. He's an Archer.
Or Ranger.
Or Ranger.
Yeah, something.
I was always a Wizard player.
Yeah. I think it was in Gauntlet Legends, which was the N64 era one that was on PlayStation N64, where it was Wizard, Warrior, Archer, and
Valkyrie.
And Valkyrie.
Yeah.
Like, they changed it, even though it was the original 4, and a lot of people complained about it. But that's the Elf. The Elf's not a class, except in original D&D.
A miserable little pile of secrets is not a good line. I'm sorry. But nostalgia.
Yeah, I'd say my favorite gaming moment from the weekend was getting to actually chat with a lot of indie game developers. For as long as I've been involved in gaming related to anything, I've not really gotten to chat with or spend time with a lot of developers to just hear them pitch their projects that they really liked. Like, what was Case, there was a game that we saw that I told you about that it was an RPG for people who have day jobs.
Oh yeah, I got the card on that.
So, I feel really bad. We're recording this episode. I saved so many business cards. Like, I want to give these people shout-outs on the episode.
He said that to me, and I was like, I'm going to go pick up a card.
Yeah, now
because that sounded
on
great.
that pitch, I want to play the game now.
Shadows of Adam.
Shadows of Adam.
Oh, okay, yeah, I did see that.
So
that looks so cool. Yeah,
it's an old school like Super Nintendo or Nintendo Final Fantasy style RPG, but it's only about 15 hours long and like
super not grindy, built so that you can get through it without like having to just pour hours and hours into it.
And that's another one of the chats that'll be featured as an interview at the end. I chatted with one of the developers whose name escapes me, of course, at the moment, but like talking about how they designed this game from perspective of people who have day jobs and lives but still want to play these games. And it really was a really great selling point and a tagline, because I went, I have a day job.
Yeah, right?
I like RPGs.
He's talking. You didn't even finish the sentence when I'd already walked over to the table to get the card.
And yeah, as Geoff said, I have a stack of business cards of people I wanted to shout out. And we'll probably shout them out in the print version, like in the episode blurb for all the stuff we saw.
And on social media, and yeah. Our follow Fridays have gotten booked up now.
Right. But like we saw so many cool things, and I think that's my favorite thing is I got to connect with so many interesting people just directly from video games. It was pretty neat.
I got a PS1 demo disc.
You did.
Matt and I went to a panel about collecting retro video games. That's sort of like the do's and don'ts. Like don't get into this if you think this is going to make you rich. This isn't finding somebody's old #1 comic book collection and eBaying it. You're doing this because you want to play these games. These are some ideas. These are some whatever. And at the end of it, he's like, and I have a box of like duplicates and things from my flea market goes. I'm happy to trade with people. And I was looking through that, and I found a PS1 demo disc. I was like, I don't have a game to trade, but what do you want for this? He looked at me and just went, $1? I feel bad taking anything where I'm like, no, please. And now I don't know what's on it.
It's just it says
it's just PlayStation.
So what you'll have to do is the next episode we record, you have to report back with what was on.
Yeah, I'm dying to know what's on this disc.
Yeah. If I survive opening this disc up, like
this disc has passed from many cons.
It's like the Pandora's box.
I have to live in the PlayStation now until the dice read 5 or 8 or something or whatever.
That's a reference that's not going to continue to age well, I feel like, but I appreciate it.
Thank you.
What about you, Case? Was there any standout moments?
I had a nice little retro bit when there was a Dreamcast with Power Stone 1. And so I sat down, I started playing the arcade mode because it was like an earlier part of yesterday, and it wasn't quite as packed an area, and like people came up and we were like playing it, and like it was so nice just to feel that game. And like it's definitely aged in a lot of ways, but you could see like, oh, it would be very easy to update this and make it feel really fresh.
Yeah.
Because like that game came out, like Smash 1 had come out, like Melee hadn't come out yet. So like I remember at the time I compared it to Smash 1.
Yeah.
And was like, oh, this is like a great 3D version of that. It'd be nice if there were 4 players. And Power Stone 2 had 4 players.
Yeah. That's right.
And it was just so amusing. Like I had forgotten how intense like getting the Power Stones was.
Right, because then you got your superpowers. Right, you got them all.
Yeah, I got big.
It changes the metagame. It's not just a fight. You're just beating everything, trying to race to these stones so that you can do some.
Before there were final smashes, there was Power Stone.
It was, yeah, I know. It was just fantastic. Like it's this keep away thing going on the whole time. So yeah, really enjoyed that, and like just holding a Dreamcast controller again because it's been a while for that. There weren't as many like real standout indie games that I tried. That like there have been ones I've gone to where I've been like, I love this game, I can't wait to tell everyone about it. Like there were a lot of games that looked interesting, but I didn't really get a chance to play.
I really wanted to try out Soundfall. It's like music-based procedurally generated like dungeon crawler game.
Yeah.
And those are all buzzwords, and they are all my kind of buzzwords. And I backed the game, and I'm like, you know what? I'll get to play it eventually, but it was very crowded. My best gaming one was the Power Pete thing.
Yeah, I figured as much. Yeah, I really loved this con a lot. Con festival, whatever we're calling it, but I definitely want
this gathering of nerds.
This MagFest.
I do want to say, if you're listening to this episode and I did get a chance to speak to you at the con and didn't remember to shout you out, call us out and we'll share your stuff. Like literally, I just had such a blast talking to so many people at this con. I just want to spread the word of all the gaming we got to do.
Yeah. This was a lot of fun. This may well be my favorite convention, my favorite festival. I'm looking forward to going to the next one. And if we're leaving anybody out, it is not out of malice. It is out of the sheer fact that it is a 24-hour festival, and
it's a lot.
It's a lot, and it's wonderful, and I can't wait for more of it.
Yeah. We're gonna wrap up this episode because I'm still in the midst of the con. I'm trying to get as many sound bites as possible, but we're gonna wrap up the episode with post discussion with some sound bites of people I got to speak to on the show floor. So if I got to speak to you, thank you. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And anything we do can further promote your products, please let us know. Of course, everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. If you have an opportunity to go to MagFest, go to MagFest. Do it. West Coast, East Coast, doesn't matter. And of course, check out all the other certain point of view shows on our network. We have so many people from our shows here in this room.
I know, it's fantastic.
Every show is represented, even though we don't have everyone here.
Yeah,
exactly.
That is true. First, of course, make sure you check out Certain Point of View with Ben and Addy, as I like to call it, the Sometimes Star Wars podcast. Most of the time it's Star Wars, but sometimes it's other things. But either way, it's always a good listen. Of course, Another Pass with Case Aiken. As of when we're recording, the most recent episode I was on was the Venom episode, which, for as much as that movie had problems, it was still fun to talk about and to have seen. Mm-hmm. So definitely worth listening. Of course, you are listening to Fun and Games with Geoff and Matt and other people in this case.
Actually, no, wait. This will come out the day after the Mummy episode comes out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, right. And you
Very
had
cool, yeah.
And you had Hannah Bleckman on there. Awesome, who's a previous guest of one of my other podcasts that's not on the network. Of course, you can listen to Reignite, which I do with MJ
We
Bradley.
might as well just bring it on the network.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
what are we doing
right.
at this
What am I
point?
waiting for? Yeah, they all should just be on it now.
Right.
But Reignite also, which I got to share a lot at the con as well. You can check that out as well. And of course, the Scruffy Nerf Herders podcast. Love to J Mike, because I'm the only person who's going to say that on this show.
I'll pour one out for J Mike.
I'll acknowledge him.
Yeah, but check that out. It's a Let's Play podcast based in the Star Wars universe with a bunch of Scruffy Nerf Herders.
Yeah. And if you went to MagFest this year or you've gone in years past, let us know what your experiences have been like. What were some highlights for you? What is MagFest for you? Because MagFest was, to me, a big celebration of all sorts of wonderful, nerdy things that we love. That's why we do this podcast. It's a conversation. Thank you for keeping the conversation going. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
I have here two people who've worked on the indie game Grumpy Witch, which is being featured at MagFest. Can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you did for the game Grumpy Witch?
So I'm Nick Crossgrove. I'm the game director and lead programmer. My job has been to organize the game's development overall from on a large scale and an overall scale, and to handle the general programming of various aspects from the framework, the integration through Unity, down to gameplay and all the other features that we're looking at implementing.
Awesome.
And my name is Caitlin Peebler. I am the art director for Grumpy Witch. My job consists of handling concept art and getting models done in 3D, as well as texturing and character design.
Awesome. My first question is actually about on the art side. So the look of the game is very cartoony and has this kind of very familiar modern cartoon vibe. What was your inspiration for the design of the characters and the backgrounds?
Well, the backgrounds, like you've seen the forest level, is based a lot on my childhood of growing up in the woods.
Oh, nice.
The monsters are mostly just fun things. The Spigs are based off of a pig called the Woolly Pig, which is a real pig. For the goblins, I wanted something that was kind of cute and not just ugly and dumb looking. The Batkins were just a fun thing. The character design, oh gosh, it's been so long. Yeah. I don't even... her original design was very anime. We took a turn that was a little bit more cartoony and something that felt a little bit more us. And something that didn't feel like we were copying.
Yeah, totally. And then as the controls, so controls like a standard platformer for the most part. You have a ranged attack and a melee attack. Was the goal from the outset to always make a action platformer?
Yes. The goal with this game, this version of the game, because there was a previous version of the game before this one that you may find on the internet if you go looking. For this version of the game, what we really wanted to do at our core was a very solid, tight-feeling action platformer, Metroidvania, similar to games like Shantae. What was one of our other inspirations? I can't remember. I'm so fried. It's been a long MagFest.
Yeah, sure.
So similar to Shantae, similar to a lot of the Nintendo games, the older Marios.
Cool. And I know that you guys are about 8 months in development now. Do you have any plans for release and like where you want to release it onto?
Yeah, so currently we're looking at an October release. That may have some wiggle room there depending on development, but that's currently what our target is. If we get a publisher, an investor, someone who's looking for more content, they're probably going to ask us to push it back because they're going to want a higher price point, which requires more content.
Right.
It's going to depend on sort of what comes our way. We're very open to stuff like that. It's going to depend on what happens.
Cool. And do you have platforms in mind, or?
Yeah, so we're currently in the process of getting signed with Microsoft.
Oh, cool.
To get on the Xbox.
Awesome.
We just got to finish the paperwork. We're looking to get on the Switch. That's sort of my primary hope with the game. Yeah. And then PlayStation, PC, obviously.
Right, of course.
And then on the PC, we're looking at all of the major, including the new platforms.
Oh, cool.
Steam, GOG, if we can get it there.
Yeah.
Discord store and Epic,
Nice.
if they're
And the
opening
Twitch
up.
store.
Oh, and the Twitch store.
Twitch
Yeah.
store. Cool. Yeah, it's really interesting how in modern gaming, like it used to just be, Nintendo and Sega, and now there are so many options, and you can either focus in on one or kind of hit everything if you can manage it. I personally play most of my platformers on the Switch, so I'm happy to hear that you're pursuing the Switch, as that is my favorite console currently, which is totally an unpopular opinion. Nobody feels that way.
You're the only one.
Yeah, I know, right? The next thing I wanted to ask about the game is, so the first level that I played, which was the forest level, has a really cool kind of upward design. It's not just left and right, and because Grumpy Witch can actually fly for a period of time too, was that something that you kind of always wanted to build in, this idea of going up instead of just to the right?
Yes, we very much wanted to not just be a flat horizontal plane.
Right.
So with the forest in particular, the way that we've designed our level is that there's basically two golden paths. And there's the high-risk, high-reward one, which is going up high.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of coins and things that persist as you play through the levels, and you use to unlock upgrades and stuff like that, which obviously we can't show here yet because we only want to show about 5 minutes of gameplay.
Right.
But if you end up getting hit a lot, you end up getting damaged, you usually fall down to the ground in the forest part, and that's sort of the easier area.
Right.
So the way that we design our levels is we're trying to allow players to modulate their own difficulty curves.
Interesting.
And to naturally guide players who are struggling back to the easier path, which in this case is going to usually be down on the lower levels. So if there's a lot of verticality, that's usually going to be the hard stuff.
Cool. Can you talk a little bit about the story of the game? Because the demo, you kind of just go into the first level. I'd love to actually know why the Switch is so grumpy and what's the story about the Grumpy Witch.
Yeah. So she is a young tween witch. She was the village. I think she was the village witch.
She's a village witch.
And her job was to cast minor spells, lots of utilitarian stuff, and all of her spells are very utility oriented. And she is not necessarily pleased with her lot in life because people will come up and ask her a lot of things. And this is sort of the background. You don't really go through this in the game, but it's sort of leading up to this. She has a magic hat that grants her a lot of powers, and this hat has been stolen. It's been stolen by, I guess, her arch nemesis.
Yeah.
I don't write the plot. I'm just trying to remember it all. So it's been stolen by her arch nemesis, and she's looking to recover it and inadvertently save the world.
Very cool. There's always a MacGuffin. In any good platformer, there's some kind of MacGuffin. Well, thank you guys for taking the time. This has been a blast. I really dug the game. I'm looking forward to trying it on the Switch when it comes out for real.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
Look out for it in October. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I am here with Katie Bug and Robert Prine. If you listen to anything that I do on the internet, you are familiar with both of them. They are joining me today as con-goers to tell me a little bit about what they loved about MagFest. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Matt. Hello.
So tell me a little bit about what you really loved about being, attending the con this year.
Well, so we've heard about MagFest forever. Katie in particular, every year it comes around and it's, the third week of January and she's like, have you heard about oh no, it was 2 weeks ago.
So we keep trying to go and we keep failing to go. So we finally made it this year. But as far as what we like about it, it's literally the Venn diagram of Robert's interests.
I am deeply called out by this specific convention. I knew that it was going to be my wheelhouse because I've been inspired by video game music most of my life. Hell, I wrote I wrote a 3-piece suite of music when I was in high school, and I got an award for it. And then they came to do an interview with me, and I spent nothing but like the whole thing was just me like gushing about Nobuo Uematsu. So I knew like a video game music convention was gonna like hit the right button, or it's gonna hit the right chords. But then we're driving over here and going through the events and trying to pick out our schedule, and like Men at Arms is here blacksmithing nerdy stuff, and I blacksmith, and that's weirdly specific. And like my favorite YouTuber, Adam Neely, was here to do a but what does music mean panel, and I'm like, holy crap, like it ticks way too many of my boxes.
Well, what would you say each of your favorite thing you saw was?
Oh man, what was my favorite thing? I would say probably. What was my favorite thing? I don't know. It was all really excellent. The people is a weird thing to say, but it's always a big point of interest for me when you have all these really big conventions like New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con. Like, there's so many people crammed in such a small area, and no one's happy about it, and no one's having a good time. But so when you go to a con like MagFest, it's just a community, and so I know it's kind of a cop-out answer, but like legitimately just like watching everyone have a wonderful day. Like, there's nobody here who's grumpy. There's nobody hip-checking you or elbowing you in the face or shoving you out of the way. Particularly at the moment, listeners, since you can't see me, I'm in a wheelchair because I danced so hard at the rave last night that my knees went backwards, and now I'm a bird. Human knees don't like that. But so it's also like the rave was fun. Like, there was a rave. It was a chiptune rave. That's like, crazy.
But on like the people front, I mean, even the whole. So we arrived late for unfortunate reasons. But when we walked in the door at 5 o'clock in the morning,
there were still people partying.
There were a group of like 5 like scene kids listening to like chiptune covers of emo music and dancing their butts off, like in a random hallway. And that was just the first thing we saw when we got here. Like,
drunk scene kids dancing to chiptune covers of emo songs.
And what about you, Robert? What was your favorite thing?
Oh man, distilling down to one thing is so hard. But I guess it had to be the panel that I saw with Adam Neely. That was my personal highlight, just because like anybody who's spoken to me for more than 5 minutes knows I'll go off on like esoteric rants and just like get really deep into my intellectual cups. And Adam Neely is exactly the right person for me to listen to a lecture, because it's equal parts like funny, charming, entertaining, informative, but also like, let's talk about, the history of the word music, and like, where did that come from, and how does that inform what we think about what music is, and then how does that relate to, nerdy gaming culture. So that panel just by itself was great. And then the weird moment of the Q&A session where I was listening to people be a YouTube comment section in an actual room, like total garbage answers from people who are just trying to seem like they're the most intelligent person in the room. Yeah. And then have a charming, intelligent person leading the panel be like, yeah, well, maybe we won't be butts here. Like, it was a great panel and a really fun follow-up.
That's awesome. And would you guys come again next year?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
We've already planned it. Robert is trying to figure out how he can write enough songs in the next year to apply to play. It's things like, could we make enough things to be in the dealer's room? What cosplays will we wear? What's the plan? Are we going to busk? What's going to happen? Music, video games.
How many batteries am I going to have to strap to my body to fuel all the lights that are going to be hanging for me?
Well, I'm glad that you guys enjoyed the con. Thank you for chatting with me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Say goodbye, folks.
Goodbye, folks.
So I'm here with Mike, who developed Sneaky Ninja, which is coming out in early 2019. And I just want to chat with him a little bit about the game, which I just got to play. So, Mike, thanks for joining me.
No problem.
So, Mike, tell me a little bit about how you came up with the idea for Sneaky Ninja.
I was basically, mulling over ideas for the first full game I wanted to make. I'm a big Mario fan, as I see by your cappy hat. I guess you are too. So I love Mario games. I also love stealth games. So I was pretty much thinking, what if I just make a Mario stealth game? And it went from there.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept that, you can hide and you can sneak attack. You can wear helmets of the enemies and stuff. With developing all of these mechanics, did you come up with these ideas one at a time, or were they all kind of always there?
The basics were there, but a lot of them were added over time. I've been working on this game on and off for like 7 years now. So it's had a lot of like gestation time. A lot of times going to conventions, people come up with ideas just playing it where they think they should be able to do it. Just like intuitively, they think something should work that way, and I'm like, hey, that's a good idea. So then I put that in. The way you use enemy helmets. It was sort of the kid-friendly version of leaving a dead body behind at first, but then people were like, "Oh, so I can put that on as a disguise, right?" And I was like, "You should be able to." So then I put that in. So I didn't even come up with that idea. So it just evolves over time like that.
And what's really interesting also is like when you wear the helmet, you can't jump as high, you have less mobility. And what I really like about it is the design of the characters. For the most part, all the characters are these kind of limbless blobs, kind of a la a lot of memes and like Weeble stuff, which was online. Was that just out of simplicity, or you really liked the kind of cute round design?
It was both. Before this, I was planning on working on a bigger game, like a big action RPG, that I then decided that would take way too much time, way too ambitious for my first game. So let's go with this simpler, cute little ninja game. And they won't even have limbs, so I don't even have to animate that. And it's also adorable. And then 7 years later, that tiny little ninja game is still not done.
And so the plan is to release it early 2019, Steam and the Switch. Is that correct?
Yep. And we actually are still releasing on the Wii U because of people. We had a Kickstarter back when the Wii U was still relevant. And a lot of people have actually stuck with the system. So we're releasing it on that anyway, just to keep, not to let them down.
That's really awesome. And so the initial funding for this game came through Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And how long was the funding process for it?
As in just how long did the Kickstarter run?
Yeah.
That was a month, and that was back in 2015.
Very cool. And were there stretch goals that like affected the game and the development and certain things like that?
I don't think we actually hit any of the stretch goals. I was happy to just hit like the main goal, but a lot of the stretch goals I ended up trying to do anyway. Things like more expansive levels, a hub with stuff to do in between the levels, some bigger like boss fights and things like that. So they were too good to pass up, which is part of the reason why it took longer to make anyway than I thought, because I couldn't just not do the cool stuff. So.
Right, that makes total sense. And playing the demo level, like I see you have smoke bombs and shurikens as like your sub weapons. Are there other weapons that you unlock throughout the game?
Yeah, so actually if you see right there, he's on the equipment screen, so there's a ton of different items you can use, from basic projectiles like shuriken and arrows and sleeping darts that all have their own properties, but there's also things like a kite that you can use, sort of like Super Mario World cape to like glide through the air. There's a grappling hook that you can use, various items like that.
That's very cool. And I noticed there are all like different types of enemies, and what would you say the difficulty curve is for this game?
It's to be determined. I'm still ironing out the difficulty curve, but above all else, my goal was to truly make a game that all skill levels could play, because a lot of Nintendo games, they're for all ages. What that tends to mean is that they're very easy.
Right.
So what I wanted to do is, I have difficulty modes that radically change how the game works. So grasshopper mode is like very easy, that even the littlest kids, like if they can hold a controller and press buttons, they can play on grasshopper mode. And then it goes all the way up to Grandmaster mode, which is like a truly hardcore stealth game. That's like a challenge mode that I don't even recommend people play at conventions, because they just can't even get past like the second enemy.
Well, that's really awesome, Mike. I mean, the game looks beautiful. It's got this kind of very cartoony art style that I think is really approachable. And so I wish you all the luck with getting this out in 2019 and look forward to playing it on my Switch.
Thank you very much. It's been a long road, but glad to finally be at the end of it.
Very cool. Thanks. So I'm here with Tyler of Something Classic, chatting a little bit about Shadows of Adam. Can you tell people a little bit about the game?
Yeah, so Shadows of Adam is basically going to play a lot like your classic turn-based RPG, but a little more streamlined. We like to call it a JRPG for people with jobs. Maybe don't want to have to jump into a 60, 80-hour RPG. Want to just play a fun retro-style turn-based game with all the fat taken out.
And is this something that's heavily influenced by like Final Fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's going to be very similar to your Final Fantasies on the SNES, Earthbound, Lufia 2, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, Breath of Fire, etc. All those classic games you love. It's very much like that, but a little more streamlined and focused.
And so you're one of the 5 people who developed the game. What would you say is your favorite thing about what you created in the game? Like a favorite boss or a favorite moment, something like that?
I'm really proud of our side content. Towards the end of the game especially, there's a lot of side quests, and most were actually formed from Kickstarter backers, which pledged high enough to get their own quest, and they ended up becoming like really in-depth, good side content. We ended up releasing a DLC that was originally a Kickstarter exclusive, and it really fleshed out the world, added a lot of extra customization, a lot of extra stuff, and we're very proud. I would say the DLC, I'm very proud of the DLC.
That's really awesome. And so where can people find this game? I know you said it's coming out for Switch later this year. Is it also available on Steam?
Yeah, it's currently on Steam, but it'll be coming out to Nintendo Switch this year. Please follow us on Twitter at Something Classic. That's CLASSC, and somethingclassic.net.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time, Tyler. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.